Hey guys, Audrey and Rebecca here from Inbox Academy. I know we're usually coming at you with tips and tricks in the email marketing world, but today we're going to do things a little different. And we are actually going to dive into Audrey and her journey. I love that we're doing this because it's an opportunity for me to learn a little bit more about Audrey as well. Even though we're already biz besties, we have not been friends forever. So Audrey, go ahead and take it. Make sure you start
Yeah,
from your childhood because I want to hear a little bit about like your upbringing and all of that fun stuff.
yeah. So I grew up in East Tennessee in Knoxville. It was a wonderful place to grow up. Got a lot of time outdoors. Sparked a love of hiking and things like that for me, living close to the Smoky Mountains. Um, and I also grew up as a competitive sailor, so I it's a very
Well,
strange hobby, I know, to be growing up in East Tennessee. It was passed down from my family. My grandfather was a sailor, my dad was a sailor, and, we actually there's a lot of lakes in the Knoxville
cool.
area and stuff, so I actually sailed a lot on the lakes, but we also did a lot of traveling. So from the time I was 8 years old, I was, competing in a single-handed boat, meaning, like, it's just me in this little bathtub of a boat, going out and racing on the ocean, and
That's
it was
so cool.
really
Yeah. That is so cool. Seriously. I don't even know if I'd let my 8-year-old get on a boat. That is so cool yeah, that's awesome.
it was really fun, but it also, definitely, took a lot of courage and was made me into a very independent child, which I like to throw back at my dad's face when he's like, "Why do you have to do everything yourself?" And I'm like, "Because you put me in a boat at 8 years old and told me I could do everything myself."
You did it, dad. You did it.
Probably started my entrepreneurial spirit
No,
very
there
young.
love it.
Yeah, but, it was a amazing, experience to
Yeah.
compete at a national and then eventually international level, in youth sailing. I actually got the chance to join the national team and travel internationally when I was, like, 13 to 15, went to Europe a couple times.
Like where? Where did you get to go? What countries?
Yeah, I went to, Belgium, the Netherlands, and France.
So
Um,
cool. That
yeah,
is
yeah.
yeah.
And of course, my parents wanted to, like, take advantage of that as well. So one of those trips, like, my mom and me and my sister all went and did a little tour of, like, part of Germany and Belgium, and, it was really, really cool. And then, yeah, there was also several times where I was traveling with the team without a parent, at that young age. So I became a very proficient traveler very young, and it
Yeah.
definitely sparked a huge love of travel for me, which has continued to be a priority.
I was gonna say that definitely has not slowed down.
Yes.
Also, being from Tennessee, you're obviously a football girl, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Being
How about
from being
that?
from Knoxville, definitely grew up being a huge University of Tennessee football fan. It's such a college town, and the
Mhm.
football scene in particular is something else. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
grew up with season tickets, and yeah, if you sign up for my emails, you will get some emails about football throughout
Yeah.
the
Yeah. I was gonna say even, your own email list, but even Inbox Academy, you throw that in there sometimes and you're like, I'm a football girl, you know? I think other girls that watch this, guys too, but other girls are like, "Oh, that's awesome. She's into football like I am." Like, there's not a lot of girls as in maybe there is, but not around me and not growing up. So it was always
Yeah.
the guys, you know what I mean?
Yes. And I
So
definitely, like, do not see it with the girl boss and, like, influencers. You don't
yeah,
see girls being excited about football, I
no.
feel like, so, yeah.
Not
I
as
mean, we are
excited as
entering the
you.
the era of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, so, maybe that will be a more common thing in the future, but
So true. So you were basically into football and you were also out sailing and then, you did that through your teenage years and you got to travel and be exposed to so many cool things, I'm sure. So where did you go, where did you go after college? What kind of led into the next step for you?
Yeah, so I did. I went to college at University of Vermont partially because they had a competitive sailing team. And then also my sister went to a different school in Vermont, which was a big draw as well. She was 1 year ahead of me. So it was nice
Mhm.
to, have my sister be in the same state, even though we were far from home. We really loved it. And I think that school especially, or just also the whole state of Vermont really, like, sparked in me a love of in the environment and sustainability and stuff like that. It's just really big up there. And definitely also got to do, so much outdoorsy, like, kayaking and hiking and skiing and all of that stuff, so I love that. Also, Lake Champlain is, like, the most gorgeous place to sail.
Really?
If anybody loves water sports out there, Lake Champlain is worth a
Okay.
visit. Um
Very cool.
yeah, it was an amazing experience, and, yeah, while I was there, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life.
Yeah.
So, I really just dove into what came easily to me and was fun to study for me, which was English and psychology, and I got a double major in English and psychology. And through the psychology department, I started studying animal behavior. And I'd always been a big animal lover, but that those animal behavior classes really spurred that for me. So when I started thinking about what I wanted to do after I graduated, I ended up deciding I really wanted to work at zoos. I had always loved
Yeah.
exotic animals growing up and going to zoos and everything like that. And they're such a um, place of pushing conservation and sustainability and stuff like that, so it kind of fit both of those loves for me. Hey, guys. Okay, sorry about that quick break. We had a little
Breastfeeding emergency. A
little
baby
needy
that
baby.
yeah, the baby that will not take a bottle was like, "Feed me." So we had to pause and feed, and now we're back to Audrey, so just keeping it real with you. So
Oh, I think we left off, I was getting out of college
yeah.
and, yeah, decided that I wanted to get into the zoo world. So I actually did several internships. Zookeeping, it turns out, I didn't know until I was in the midst of it, is a extremely competitive field despite the fact that it does not pay well. So
Interesting.
many, many zoos pay minimum wage, for their state and, uh yeah, and yet you have to do, like, unpaid internships to even get into that field and job, so
So basically, you have to really, really love what you do and not necessarily love money
yeah.
or having a lot of it.
Yes. And it makes sense a little bit that, you've got these zoos that have all these animals to care for, and when there's a choice of, should we give our zookeepers a raise or should we put that money into upgrading an exhibit or, getting something better for the animals, a lot of times they're gonna choose the animals, and that's, not necessarily a bad thing, but then it can be when it turns into, burnout and turnover and a lot of other issues that zoos struggle with, which I eventually felt firsthand. So I was a zookeeper for 8 years, absolutely did love it. It was a wonderful job in so many ways, had some incredible experiences along the way as well, some great party stories to tell, maybe we'll, also get on our email list if you want some of
Yeah. Want some of those stories, just hop on in there.
um,
Yeah,
but
so
yeah.
not only did you say there's, like, a lot of turnover and burnout, right? But you are also which obviously goes into the burnout, but you were really overworked, like, you shared that with me a lot that, like, you could not take any time off, right?
Yes. So that
Yeah.
was probably the biggest things that like wore on me over time over those 8 years was, we were constantly short staffed as well as being underpaid. So you're just working like endless hours for very little pay. And then in addition to that, because, animals got to eat, zoos are open on the weekends, we are always being asked to work weekends and holidays, which was something that I knew going into the job. But definitely didn't realize, long term the impact that would have on, like, my life and my friends and family and stuff, so,
Mhm.
um, and it definitely came to a head a little bit when I met my now fiance, Will, who is a school teacher. And so he, although he has a lot of time off, because he's on the school calendar, they do not have much flexibility at all with that time. So he has weekends, he has school holidays. And meanwhile, I could hardly ever take those days off. So we barely ever had time together off of work,
That's tough.
which is really hard. Yeah. And in addition, definitely getting vacation time was a struggle, even though we were technically supposed to have it with our benefits. It was hard to get those days approved that you wanted.
Yeah.
I was, missing important weddings and big moments in my family and things like that. So over the course of 8 years, definitely starts to wear on you.
Yeah, no,
um,
I remember you shared that one time, like, it's hard, like, most people have jobs, even if they're reporting to, like, a 9 to 5, right? They have a job where, like, they can put in for things ahead of time as long as they do it in advance, they can use their vacation time, but there's times you put in for stuff that you were just told no, like, there was
yeah,
a whole option, no in advance enough, none of that, it was just, "No, you can't have the
yeah,
time." Yeah, and
yeah.
your
They were definitely just
wedding.
like,
Yeah, your sister's wedding, that would be so hard to.
oh yeah, it wasn't my sister's wedding, but one
Oh,
of my best friend's wedding. I
or
was
your
told,
best friend's wedding, that's right, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's tough. Whew,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, all of those things definitely started to wear on me, and also the money. I know it's like I think I grew up with this ideal that money didn't matter to me, right? That I could make do with little and didn't need this materialistic life and that kind of, it
Mhm,
it felt like a value to me that I would work for good and the money didn't matter. And it took a lot of unraveling to realize that, money's not evil,
mhm,
and wanting money is not evil.
yeah,
That was a lot of mindset work for me, actually, that I had to like overcome to even recognize that I did want to make more money than minimum wage.
yeah,
Um,
and that
and
making more money, I bet it's hard when you're doing such meaningful work and
mhm,
you're making a certain amount, and then you're like, "I'm gonna possibly look into something else because I need to make more money." Like, how that has to be so hard, like,
yeah,
guilty, but I think at the same time, like, I've had limiting beliefs on that too, but it's like, at the end of the day, like, you need a retirement savings. You need to take care of yourself. Like, you can still do some of that kind of work, whether it's volunteer or whatever you decide to do. There's ways to still give, but then take care of yourself, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that, like, oftentimes having money helps you give back in so many ways that I can now donate to causes that I believe in and
Mhm.
all of that. And definitely not having money does not let you travel much. So that being one of my values was something I just kind of put on hold and didn't do a lot of for those
Yeah.
8 years, which is tough to, have something that you found passion and love in, when you were young and then just kind of give it up.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, when I kind of knew I was done with zookeeping, I had all these reasons that I wanted to leave the field, but I had absolutely no idea yet again what I was going to do with the rest of my life. Um, so I kind of set out on just this journey of like, while I was still working at a zoo, I was just exploring possibilities and job searching and kind of really putting myself out there in terms of, like, what I could envision myself doing
Mhm.
and, what skills I already had and things like that. And I think I must have been searching, because I have my English degree, I was searching for writing jobs and things because I knew that that would be more flexible with
Yeah.
hours and that kinda stuff, and it's a skill I had still. Um, and that's when I was targeted by an ad for a copywriting course.
Mhm. Same one as me. It's not my story though, it's your story right now, but yeah.
Sorry, I just made a terrible face because my dog started scratching
Oh,
the door.
mm. Yeah.
Okay, full of real life interruptions today.
Yep, absolutely, keeping it real.
Yes, so where are we at? So that was how you and I met, was in this copywriting course and community. and I got my business started from that, which was it was really incredible. I'm so grateful to that course for, putting me in the position where I could finally quit my job. Um, I actually I took a bit of a leap of faith. I quit my job before I had my first paying client.
Oh my god.
Um, I spent about a year no, it wasn't a year, I guess it was about 6 to 8 months going through the course, really, really learning the trade and the skills that I needed, setting up my business so that I was ready to take clients. Like I created a website and, learned how to send invoices and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, and then I, took a whole summer off basically. So I quit in the spring, took the summer to travel with my, fiancé because he was off of school, and, that was kind of planned on purpose. I knew that I needed some reset time after that
Yeah.
burnout.
You're here.
Um and I was lucky enough that, uh, I had been saving for a long time. Um, Not really sure what I was saving for even. I'm just kind of one of those people that always felt like I needed a savings account, and so I
Yeah.
had about 6 months in savings. So I took those 3 months basically off, and then, in the fall, really dove in knowing I had 3 months that I needed to be making my living wage
Yeah.
in that time. And it was tough. It took a lot of work during that time, but I was able to, by I guess it was like 2 months in, I was making about half of what I needed to cover all my expenses, so that extended my savings account even more,
Oh,
and really by December of that year, I was making enough to support myself.
so there's
But
a lot of cold emailing, a lot of that whole, like, what we work with a lot of our students on is that, when you feel like you're in the trenches and sending out all those cold emails and stuff, like, you just kept going. And I love that story that you share this a lot with our students as well as how many cold emails you sent out. But do you want to share that? You should share that.
yes. Yes, I sent 100 cold emails to start, and I got a few bites, like discovery calls and interest, but I did not get a paying client from those first 100 cold emails, and it
Yeah.
was rough.
Yeah.
And I just doubled down. I got advice from mentors and had people read my emails and kept refining them, kept figuring out also, who I was getting positive responses from and how I could double down on that type of client or, really
Mm.
narrowing down who my ideal client was. And that 200 more cold emails. And those 200 emails really supported my business for almost an entire year after that. Um, and I really never needed to send many more cold emails after that. I send emails now when I want to because I
Yeah.
see an ideal project opportunity or an ideal client. But I don't really have to ever.
I love that story because, that's the biggest struggle that people have when they're starting their business is like getting that first few clients and refining their cold outreach, like email and strategizing how to like when to send them and who to send to. And that was a fun module for us to build in the course. It was so much
Yeah.
information. But when you shared that story, I love that story because I'm like, that is what you kind of we are encouraging our students to have is just that will to like you absolutely can get it. You just have to be willing to keep going, even if it means 300
Yeah.
cold emails, and you did it. And I love that story. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that that is one of the things that I see most often with coaching students and students in our course is that people give up at just at the brink of where they would have started to succeed. It's so hard because definitely like all of, building a business is just a collection of learning so much.
Yeah.
And I think that yeah, there's that point where you're like this isn't working, but if you can push through and keep getting better, keep refining it, it will work. But that's when there's so many kind of like the shiny object syndrome that we talk about, where if you see another new thing and you think that's where I need to go, I need to pivot and do that. And so that can be really hard.
Or like you tell yourself like, "Oh, this isn't working for me. Am I in the wrong thing now? I'm gonna go do affiliate marketing, or I'm gonna go do this, or I'm gonna do that," like you said. And it's like, you really have to go all in on one thing. Like, it's not about, like finding the right, like pick what you wanna do and then go hard and don't give up. Um, I was gonna say too, like that 3 months that you had off for the summer, that reset, like, that is really the key behind having that, like, that drive to keep going is the mindset, right? Like, we talk a lot with our students about mindset, you hear it everywhere, imposter syndrome, like, all of that. But I feel like for you, you were really able to get in a good place with your mindset because you've had that break. You were
Yeah.
able to reset, give your body, your mind, your relationships, like, what they needed, and I think that's the key too, is, like, you have to make sure you're taking care of yourself along the journey, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Mindset work was a big part of my journey too.
Uh-huh.
I don't
Yeah.
talk about it a ton, but yeah, when I was super burnt out, but I also had massive anxiety at that point, and, that partially came from my job,
Yeah.
and I really was in a pretty bad space mentally,
Mm.
when I quit that job, and I actually you just talking about that, you reminded me of, like, an email that I sent to, our mentor and the creator of the course that we took, that she focuses a lot on mindset work, and I remember sending her an email and being like, "I went for a walk today and actually didn't have to put on headphones and realized that I was, like, okay with being with me for, like,
Mhm.
the time in a long time."
Oh, I love
And
that.
that was pretty crazy, and that came from, like, getting out of a toxic situation and job and career and getting into something that was much more aligned with me and my
And
values.
and you probably didn't even realize how bad it was until you were in a place where it was all cleared away, right?
Yeah,
Like, that's
yeah,
usually how it goes. Mhm.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's wild, yeah, so that was kind of the start of my entrepreneurial journey, and, so I had this copywriting business, it was functioning, it was covering my, basic expenses.
Yeah.
But I still kind of felt like I was struggling, right? It was like, I felt like I was working really hard just to cover those basic expenses.
I'm gonna interrupt you. What kind of stuff were you doing at that time for your freelancing?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna dive
Yeah.
into is I was doing a lot of blogs.
Lot of
Um, that's what I was taught to, start with, and I get it. It's a pretty easy, form of writing to get into starting out as a copywriter, um, but I hated them. I really hated blogs. They would take me so long to write,
um,
and it just did not come super naturally to me. I really, really, really hate SEO. I feel like it just puts such a restraint on my creativity. Like, I would have a really great idea for a hook of how I wanted to, introduce the topic to this blog and like, I really love storytelling, so I would want to dive straight into the storytelling. And then SEO is telling you, "No, no, no, you have to have the keywords in the title and in the, like, first sentence of the blog." And I'm like, "Well, how am I supposed to do this cute hook then?" Like, so I just really felt like it was cramping my style.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, it really was not for me, and I did feel like even when I increased my prices with blogs, it still didn't feel worth it, it still didn't feel fun, and like I said, I was still just barely scraping by with how much work I could accomplish in a week. Um, and I do wanna point out that how much work I could accomplish in a week sometimes was 40 hours, but a lot of times it was not. I think when we're in these kind of creative fields, people still feel like the need to box themselves into, "You need to work a 40-hour week." But oftentimes, like, I creatively can't write that many hours
Yeah,
in a
it's a good point.
so, like, even if I'm sitting at my desk, sometimes I'm not being productive at all, and the most productive thing to do would be go for a walk and then come back and,
Mhm.
not just be, like, banging your head on the keyboard. Um,
Mm.
so, yes, I worked some long hours some weeks, but I also was not always working the full hours, but I knew that I was kind of maxing out my creativity and my writing hours. So I was trying to figure out, yeah, like what I enjoyed and stuff. And kind of ever since the beginning, I liked email. I knew that I enjoyed it, and I had a email client that I started very early on. Um, I wasn't making very much from them. I was making about $35 an email, which is pretty
Wow.
wild. Um,
We
so I
we
knew
may
that I
not
couldn't
just
be.
just a little interruption. We do not suggest $30 for an email.
No, not at all. That is what beginner little writer me, offered to charge. But yeah, I knew that I couldn't make my living writing for $35 an email. That would take a lot of emails.
Uh-huh.
But so that was kind of when I started experimenting with getting into the back end of things and offering the email strategy, content ideas, segmentation,
Really?
actually doing the tech, the backside of the emails. And when I kind of added all of that to my packages was when suddenly I could offer these bigger retainers and bigger just packages in general to my clients where I was charging thousands of dollars for just, one retainer, one package. That's when it took me from, I was making like 3,000 a month or even a little bit less than and with just covering my basic expenses to then easily making $5,000 a month,
Mhm.
pushing into 10K months. Um, those things all started to happen when I made the shift into really doing full service email.
Yeah, and you're doubling your income, really, but
Mhm.
you were not doubling the work, right? Because
Oh, yeah.
you
No, not
there's
at all.
yeah, because you think like, "Oh, you go from $5,000 a month to $10,000 or 2,000 to 4,000, you're doubling your work if you're already maxed out at what you were doing before, how in the world were you making more and working less?"
Yeah, and the thing about doing the email backend is it was a little bit challenging at the beginning, right? I had to learn all of these things, and I spent a lot of time watching tutorials and YouTube videos and all kinds of stuff like that to really get a feel for it. And I felt like I was pricing in a way that felt good for, how much work that was. It was a lot of work to like set up these systems and things. Um, but the thing is once you do it once even, the second time is that much faster, and the third time is that much faster than that. And so I became really efficient at doing those back end jobs. And so I could, focus on the writing and offer this really valuable service that doesn't take me very long. But it
Mhm.
took a long time to learn. And I think that's where, business owners are willing to pay somebody a lot of money to come in and take that piece from them because they don't have time to sit down and learn how to use these really, fairly complex software, some of them can be, um, to get the maximum out of their email marketing.
Yeah.
Because this software has like incredible capability if you know how to use it. But if they don't, then they're more than willing to pay an expert to help them out and get that job done.
Yeah, and the back end stuff is so like, that's what you said, that, like, that's what they're willing to pay for. Because even sometimes you see a business has emails going out, does not mean they have an email marketer on their team. They could have someone from another area of the team or the owner themselves are like, writing these up and maybe they even look great and you're like, "Oh, they don't need an email marketer. They have a great email." Maybe they're not making any money from them. They're not segmenting correctly. They're not sending it the right day or the right time, and that's your job as you start to manage the back end. You're giving them so much value.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I
and
give a
those
very specific example actually of that. One of my favorite clients, I cold pitched them in an email and they already were sending out pretty beautiful emails.
Mm.
I could tell that the copywriting was maybe a little too long. They could make them a lot more concise and more direct, but they were pretty good emails already. I pitched them and it turns out, they had a blog writer who really was truly still is a beautiful content writer, not so much a like direct response copywriter. And so she was just taking the blog that she wrote, cutting it down in size to fit in an email, and then their graphic designer was doing the back end of the email system, and she hated it. She was
Oh
like,
my gosh.
"Please, I need to get this task off my hands. I don't know what I'm doing. This is not my forte." But that's who they had to do it. And
Mhm.
so me coming in and offering to take email marketing completely off their hands, the owner was excited. She's like, "Oh, thank God we can give our graphic designer back half her time. She can focus on the things in her zone of genius. Our blog writer doesn't really want to be doing this either." So it was the perfect like moment for me to come in for their company. And again, like just they're sitting there sending out emails and they're pretty good, but they were sending them at noon Eastern time, I think, just period, and they're a global brand, and I was like, we can send in the recipient's time zone, with this little feature
Yeah.
here in the back end, and suddenly the open rates, jumped up
Mhm. I'm sure. Yeah.
20%, I think it was something like, to send in the recipient's time zone, and you're not sending it, midnight in Japan, and
And
all
like
that kind of
that
stuff.
that's so simple, right? Like
Yeah.
sending the recipient's time zone, but if you don't understand the back end of an ESP or you've never it's not your area of expertise, you're not gonna think through those little things. But those little things make such a big difference in email marketing. Like that's what makes or breaks your campaigns? So,
Yeah.
yeah, so they were like, "Yes, Audrey, please come on our team as fast as you can." And you just recently got a raise from them too, right? Like they upped your
Uh
retainer.
Not super recently, that was about a year ago, but
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
that retainer, it actually started with just a one-off project of kind
Mhm.
of us testing the waters to see if I'd be a good fit for their team. So I wrote them a Black Friday campaign because it was November and that was what
Yeah.
they needed next. So I wrote them, like 5 emails for that, and after that, they were like, "Yes, we love this. Let's continue." I think it started off as like an $800 retainer. And it has slowly grown over time to be a $3,000 retainer,
Yeah.
which is really nice, and yeah, that's kind of how, I like to structure my business is I have just a few retainers that kind of cover my expenses, and then I like to bring in extra projects when I want them, and that's where Rebecca and I differ a little bit, and we'll get into that probably in her story, but, my business now is set up to where I can really cover my retainers pretty, well and easily through, the amount that I like to work, the amount of hours that I like to work, and then I can bring on other projects when I kind of want extra income for whatever reason, and it works really great with my travel, and things like that, is that I can just scale back the projects that I take on or schedule them for after I get back, whereas the retainers I'm able to maintain over while I'm traveling, at the
Yeah.
level that I have them now, so
I love that. You have like your retainers for your stable income and then you scale back or scale forward whenever you want, but at the end of the day it's your choice. Like
yeah,
and that's like complete opposite from zookeeper life, right?
yes.
Complete
I
opposite.
know. I talk about that sometimes. People say, "Do you think you would ever go back to a regular job?" And I'm like, "I don't know if I ever could," because I love setting my own schedule. I absolutely love the flexibility of traveling and stuff.
Yeah.
We have days that, Will and I will travel and I'm still working, because I can
Mhm.
get 2 hours of work done at the airport. I can sometimes even get my laptop out in the car while we're on a long drive and get a little bit of work done, and I don't need to, sit down at a desk and work 8 hours to be able to provide good work to my clients, and
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So right now you're all in for email marketing. You don't really do much else besides email marketing, right?
I have a few clients who will ask me to do random little jobs here and there. So I will occasionally write like landing pages, Facebook ads, headlines, a couple things like that. But I don't write blogs anymore.
Yeah. Those are done.
and and yeah, the I would say about 95% of my work is emails.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then if you were to like share with our viewers, What is like right now, what does your work week kind of look like? Like, do you have an average of a certain amount of hours? Are you working primarily during the day when like Will's at work and you're off weekends and nights? Like, where are your boundaries in that too? I would love for you to share that.
Yeah, yeah, I would say I typically work maybe 5-hour days.
Okay.
Um, Sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more.
Mhm.
And yeah, I really try to be off work when Will is off work. That's my fiance. Um, and so I love to get done at 3 if I can, because that's when he gets off. But at the same time, I'm not a morning person. So that's
I
sometimes I work till 5 if I didn't get up early enough.
That's something I knew. I knew that one. You're not a worry because neither am I.
Yes, and then I also really have been working on my fitness, and I like to go to the gym during the day. I hate going at, like, 5 o'clock when it's
Oh,
super
yeah.
crowded, so, I often try to fit that into my day as well, so it's really a nice balance of I'm not big on sitting on a computer all day, so even though that is technically, my job, if I can get out, I do, and, I love to, like, sit outside when I'm just writing, and then I can do the email backend when I get back inside, but, I like to do a lot of the writing outside and
Yeah,
take
that's
walks
something
with my
that it
dogs.
that's something that you inspired me to do more was get outside during the rain. You got, I think last Christmas or I forget, you got the little pad that doesn't have like the reflection like your computer would, and you don't need the internet for it. And it's like a little scribble pad kind of. And I love that, like, you're like, I'm gonna go write these emails. I'll talk to you in a little bit. I'm gonna go to the park and like
Yeah.
take my little pad and do some work. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so cute. I need to get out in the sun more often too. So you've inspired me to do that
It's so
more.
refreshing. It really feels like it's just, like, so nice to go to a coffee shop or go to a park and really kind of unplug from the desk a little bit.
Yeah.
It just is, like, one of the perks of our job that I
Yeah.
love taking advantage of it.
So if you were to, this is a, you just so people know, Audrey did not know I was going to ask any of these questions. These were not like scripted. We kind of just like jumped on and we're like, let's do this video. But I wanted to ask you if someone was dealing with major burnout right now, because I feel like, when we go into my story, I kind of have more of a, single mom kind of that desperation story. Yours is more of like burnt out, like in a job that it was not making, ends meet and you were emotionally and physically exhausted. If somebody was watching this that's dealing with that right now, what would be your piece of advice for them? Like number one piece of advice?
I mean, number one piece of advice is take care of your mental health as best you can.
Yeah.
Do what you can to remove and or set boundaries around toxic people in your life. And work on get outside, do those things that are good for your brain. If you're like a journaler or you just need, quality time with a best friend,
Mhm.
something like that, like, whatever things that like, really focus on, like, making the time and space for that because it's really, really hard to have the motivational energy to, like, create something new, like a whole new business
Uh-huh.
or, finding a new career or doing all of those things when you're so low, that you can, barely get through every day. If you're not refilling your cup, it's gonna be even harder, and so I think it can be hard to get out of that desperation energy of like, "Well, I need to be, doing X, Y, or Z to build my business," and you feel like doing these other things is not productive. I think that changing that mindset of productivity, and remembering that you have to do the things that will fill your cup to be able to pour from it in the future. And then also chipping away. Like I said, I continued my job even though it was making me slightly miserable. I continued it for like 6 to 8 months. I think it was that I was in the course working toward something new and that kind of gave me a light at the end of the tunnel a little bit, but I was still taking in my full-time income, putting stuff in savings during that time as much as I could, which is another, I think, really great, uh, thing to do if you're able to put anything in savings while you're, like, building towards quitting a job. It's definitely gonna give you that, like, nest egg and a little bit of security during that time. And then yeah, I would just chip away, and it really was finding any pockets of time that I could. So, I would literally listen to videos and podcasts and things to learn new skills about copywriting and everything, literally while I was in the shower, brushing my teeth, washing dishes, like, all of the things that you have to do already. Listening was the one thing that I could do all the time, even, even when I'm exhausted, even when I'm can't find time for anything else, I could at least just, like, turn something on in the background and learn. And so I just kept learning and knew that that was getting me closer to, the next step is doing. And I do think we often tend to put off the doing part for too long.
Yeah.
But that was the one thing I was able to really do a lot of while I was still working was take care of my mental health and start learning a lot and just taking advantage of any time I did have, which was a lot of listening. Yeah.
Yeah. And look at you now. You're like engaged and happy and balanced. And, I just, I mean, your story inspires me too. Like, it's just, the overall story that I feel like everybody is experiencing at one point in their life, right? Like my story specifically of how I got into freelancing may not have to do with like burnout because I wasn't working at the time, but like we all experience burnout in one way or like I'm totally burnout right now with a newborn. I am totally burnt out. But like, you know what I mean? Like everybody has in their lives a season that they feel that. So I think
Yeah.
that advice just in general is really beautiful. I'm really grateful that you could share that with everybody.
Well, thanks guys for listening to my story. If you want to know more about us, we're going to post the video for Rebecca's story here soon. And you can always jump on our email list, which is where we share pretty much everything about our lives, our current updates, and also lots of email tips. So definitely jump on there if you haven't already.
Bye, guys. See you soon.